innovative governance and service delivery. And I want to say one thing about the constitution of the panel here. The constitution of the panel here takes into cognizance the fact that when you talk about good governance and service delivery, you need three critical sectors to collaborate. And the three critical sectors are the public sector, the private sector, and the not-for-profit sector. And we have these three key sectors represented here. So the contributions from the members of this panel will be to further build on the keynote address and try to actually look at innovative governance from the aspects of the three different sectors I just mentioned. But I'll just quickly like to run through a quick summary of a presentation from the lead speaker. He did talk about the Chapter 2 of the Nigerian Constitution on the fundamental objectives and directive principles of state policy, where it says that the welfare and security of the people shall be the primary purpose of governance. And my lawyer friend tells me that whenever that word shall is used in strictly legal terms, it means what? It means compulsory, it means obligatory, it's binding. So when we talk about service delivery and the security being the fundamental principles of governance, it means that government it only exists when we are sure that these principles are being delivered to the people at the grassroots. He gave a lot of examples, which because of time I will not be able to run through, but at this juncture, I want to invite, because we're going to give 5 minutes each. We're already running out of time. We're going to give 5 minutes each to each of the panelists to actually look at the issue of innovative governance and service delivery from the different aspects. And I want to start from my far right and invite Reverend Father John Patrick Ngoyi to actually look at this issue from the not-for-profit sector and also drawing from his vast experience in development work in Nigeria. Can we welcome him to a round of applause? Microphone on your side.
I do remember when in the late 80s I got myself involved in development work. I was a very busy man, going to help the farmers, going to help people living with disabilities, going to help the poor. I was moving around because I was a development agent. I knew what development was. But mind you, it was not I who knew. It was the founders who told me what was good for those people. Development agenda was designed by the experts. Development agenda was designed by those who were the donors, those who knew where they passed through, and they told us, please follow us. We will show you the way. And this went as far as the World Bank, IMF, G8, development countries called them. Today, if you go to JDPC at Ijebode, you are going to meet the office of small-scale farmers. They are the ones telling me what they want to do. You are going to meet the office of people living with disabilities. They are the ones telling me, Father, this is what we need. You are going to be the office of Okada riders. They are the ones giving me their own top priorities. You are going to be the office of women who organize the market. They are the ones designing and telling me their own stories. In other words, at the level of civil society, the way we used to perceive development has changed. We are not the one telling people what is good for them. It is the people now telling us what is good for themselves. What we have to do is to facilitate the process of change, the change they themselves want. By implication, these are serious consequences for governance. The people who do no longer recognize the right of NGOs to tell them what to do are also taking and claiming their own right from government. People no longer believe it is the duty of the government to come and impose on them what is good for them. The government is no longer believed to be the sole administrator of development, the one with the prerogative of knowing what is good for the people. By implication, governance has become a business of what is called today at the UN level multi-stakeholder partnerships. Private sector, civil society, government have to come together to design programs that will be beneficial to all without leaving anyone behind. What am I saying? I am saying right now, the whole world has tuned up to implementing Agenda 2030 with the 17 goals. And the guest speaker mentioned the African Agenda 2063, which also puts together at the heart of development the people themselves. What are the challenges? The challenges is the call for conversion. Business as usual should no longer be the thing of the day. People in government need to be reformed, need to accept that they are no longer the one with the monopoly of knowledge. The people must be brought in. The private sector and the civil society need to change. The private sector cannot simply go out and say, we are the one producing goods and services, whatever we produce, we'll go to campaign and make you to sell, to buy those ideas. They now to come together with the civil society, sit down, look at the environment in which they are, dipping their hands and collecting raw material to transform and produce it in a sustainable manner. We do no longer have the right to allow the private sector to simply go ahead producing goods while not guaranteeing the future of those who will come after us. We are calling for one missing link. What is the missing link? The capacity to generate knowledge. The capacity to generate data. Data that will enable public policies that are responsive to the real needs of the people. It is no longer an issue of people sitting down in their offices. They can be bureaucrats. It is no longer, I'm sorry, our honorable, it is no longer a matter of the honorable sitting down in their chambers and producing laws and policies that are not based on the reality on the ground. We have to find a new partnership between researchers and public policy makers. We have to destroy the kind of mutual suspicion that has been existing between policy makers and knowledge producers. We are actually calling if there will be an integrated regional development plan. There is an absolute necessity to build a regional information system that will take cognizance of the reality on the ground. Information that will be disaggregated. You are not just going to talk about women. Who are the women? What are the different classes among the women? What are the different needs of the women? You are not simply going to talk about the rural area. We are told Lagos is the rural area, is it? You have no land. So, whatever Lagos has to do for agriculture, they may have to depend on Ogun State. Let the researchers, those who are going to produce the real data, let's make sure that the government invests in infrastructural and institutions system that will produce the knowledge needed for public policy making. Once again, I am hopeful that the newfound partnership will allow the state to invest in human resources. I want to reiterate what the guest speaker said. It's not the business of the state to provide physical things. Train people. Let people get the required knowledge for them to take initiative. They will be able to innovate. They will be able to bring institutions that will respond to the needs of tomorrow. Without being an agent of CNN, I said, with them, the best way to predict the future, they used to say, we need to create it. It is the business of the state to create the future. Today, by investing as massively as they can in the development of human resources and the generation of knowledge that will enable public policies that will be responsive to the real demands of the people. Mr. Moderator, thank you.
Thank you very much, Reverend Father John Patrick Ngoyi. Father Ngoyi just built on a key point that was made by the keynote speaker when he talked about states engaging in collaborative development rather than competition that is it's not today. I mean, competition that does not take into consideration the competitive advantage of each of the states. Now, John Patrick is bringing another aspect to this, that there is need for research-based policy making, where the people are the center of government. And these two aspects, I think, are very critical. And at this juncture, I want to bring in the Honorable Commissioner for Urban and Fiscal Planning of the state to actually contribute further based on our experience from both working in the private sector and as well as our work in the government.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, first I would like to extend the apologies of Her Excellency the Deputy Governor. She had to rush back to the office real quickly to receive some visitors on behalf of His Excellency the Governor, and she will rejoin this assembly shortly once she's done there. I will take my leanings from the presentation of the keynote speaker, and I will aim not to entirely join issues, but I will have to respond to a few issues that he has raised. I belong to the sector that is constantly beaten down, that is constantly kicked, that is constantly held responsible for everything bad, and that's government. Thankfully, as the moderator has said, I am lucky enough to have been on the other side. That's the private sector. I crossed over 6 years ago. I must say it was daunting, but I do have no regrets. And for those that are still on the other side, I will implore you in every way possible, whatever you can do to collaborate with the public sector, it is never too late, it is never too early, it is never too quick. Do your bit. Femi, one of the things you spoke to was the issue of policy formulation as the bedrock of any government. Entirely true, 100%. What you refused to speak to is that the maximum number of years any government can spend in office in Nigeria is 8 years. And therefore you're subjected to policy capitulations over and over again. Essentially because we all hide under the cloak of there's a constitution and the best I can do is make policy formulations for my own government. If something works, why should we not consistently use that instead of reinventing the wheel at all times? You find different governments all in the name of trying to do something differently, trying to reinvent the wheel. And you see, that is the basis for most failings that we then have to contend with. I'm glad, and you see, whatever is good, everybody should take as a yardstick and a good example. You've come here, you've told us about things associated with Lagos. Lagos, as far as you're concerned, is your best example. Happy to hear it. I worked for a state government that, as at 7 years ago, had as the maximum ever IGR, 700 million naira. Within 2-3 years of that, this current government was clocking 3 billion as its IGR. Where Lagos is not entirely dependent on FAC is where we are going. And as I speak to you, we are looking, I think our IGR is probably inching towards 6-7 billion. And we're one of the few state governments in Nigeria today that do not owe salaries, workers' salaries, and we pay on time. I belong to a state government, or I work with a government that does not see every improvement in its activities as normalcy. What do you consider to be normal? We came into government, there was a World Bank report on the ease of doing business in Nigeria. My colleague, Bivashiru, the Honorable Commissioner for Commerce, will speak in depth about that later. Okay, hello. I came into a government where we're ranked number 35 out of 36 in the ease of doing business in the state. 4 years after, 2014, 3 years after we came into government, the same government, state government, is ranked number 4 or 5. We will blow our trumpets if nobody else does it for us. If you consider it normalcy that somebody jumps from number 35 to number 4, and all it is, or all it took us, was improvement in service delivery, then I dare say that yes, not only was normalcy restored, but innovations played a very key role in achieving what we do. What I will allude to in wrapping up on that particular point is that unfortunately, the concept of innovation and normalcy, the line has become entirely blurred. You find people book appointments with you, they come in to see you, then you fix an appointment for them at 11. At exactly 11 or tops, 11:05, you're opening the door to your office and asking, is that Mrs. Bisiriyu? You open the door and the person is, scampering to gather them because they have brought not only their duvet, they have also brought their mattress, knowing that they probably won't see you until 6 p.m. So when you open your door and introduce yourself, first they're wondering and looking behind themselves that, okay, maybe you are the secretary or something to the commissioner, and they still, maybe you have just come out to tell them, give the commissioner another 2-3 hours. They're not used to it. And that's what I'm saying, private sector orientation helps a lot, but it is not the ultimate. You can train your mind, you can train yourself to be a service provider. And my admonition to every single person that works in government is, first and foremost, you must see yourself as a service deliverer, a service provider. You are not doing people favors. You are there by the benevolence of the same people. So don't put your boss or bosses into office. Your boss took you, one person out of the 4, 5, 7 million people in Ogun State and said, come and work for me. If you therefore get that job, it is imperative on you to provide service and justify the confidence that has been reposed in you as a person. Therefore, and that's why I keep saying to you, that line is blurred. As an individual, you must make up your mind the day you swear to that oath, whether or not you intend to make a difference. That oath is a piece of paper. The oath is in your heart, and it is in the way you relate to people. It is in the way you execute and carry out your daily functions. I served with Governor Amosu first time. And as I've said to people severally, I've been opportunity to work in the hotspots. I came into Ogun State to work in the Bureau of Lands and Survey. Believe me, it was one of the toughest places I've ever worked in my life. I trained as a lawyer, I went into the corporate world, and I came into private sector at the peak of my career in the private world, in the private sector. I was chief legal officer of one day, where everything seemingly worked. And that's another thing I was going to say to Penny. Femi, your constituency is like this. I'm not certain how many shareholders you have. I came in thinking I was a technocrat. The minute Ayetoro people found out their daughter was in government, I had Ayetoro people to first deal with. I had the larger Ogun State people as my constituents, and you must attend to every single because they have the right. They will look at you and say, so, Femi, you are dealing with your shareholders. I don't know what you promised them. When you fail, you have government to blame. Government policy capitulations. You can see what's happening to Forex. I can't pay the dividend I promised you. I cannot do that. This government came in and promised our people, state people, 5 basic things. We said to them, we'll give you affordable qualitative education, affordable healthcare system. We will do this for agriculture. We will do that for housing and urban renewal. We will do, and then here we are. FAC started gradually. The more you spend, the less funds, or rather, the more you plan, the less funds you had to deploy to execute on those promises. And that's why I keep saying, you have someone to blame. Who do we blame? They will ask you that, Ari, should I call to Brandon? They will ask you. So you have to constantly juxtapose where you find yourself with your reality. And your reality is, you have an obligation to deliver on your set promises to the people. There is just no going back and there's no compromise. Have we done 100%? No. Are we even 90? No. But we won't judge ourselves. We will leave the people that have put us in government and in office to do that honor to us. But I can assure you, Ogun State is where it is today because a lot of people have refused to think out of the box over time. Successive governments. I've heard the expression over and over again, ìjọba tó ń kọ́ bridge síbi tí ò ti sú mi. The carnage along the Ijebu-Ode Benin Expressway could best be imagined. What did it take? We have blurred the lines between what you call federal and state roads. That's why when the federal government decided to refund state governments for projects it had executed on its behalf, Ogun State was #1 by miles. Our refund, I believe, when it came to the calculations, was over 100 billion compared to the next state that was less than 20 or 30 billion naira. That's how much we have spent on behalf of the federal government to protect the lives of the citizenry. Now, do not take it for granted. And that is the only thing the Constitution provides for. Believe me, when you can attend to the security of your people and protect their lives, you have done 70% of your work. I know that us Yoruba people will always say, it is true, but when you eat and you're uncertain how you're going to close your eyes at night, wondering about the safety of your neighborhood, it's a big issue. The governor severally was warned not to go to the trenches when militants operated. He defied security reports twice and went on boats in his wellies by himself. He led the team. On one occasion that he couldn't go, the woman you saw seated there, the deputy governor had to lead the team. As she was approaching, we have everything captured on the video. There were gunshots approaching them. They were not running from them. They were brazenly facing them. I'm saying to you, governance is a huge responsibility, but it's one you have a choice to either confront headlong or walk away from. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this is all about Dawn. And for me, because I've been in the state's representative over time, I have seen that where we seem to miss the point is on the issue of competition. Competition, as long as it's healthy, is fantastic. Therefore, for me, the takeaway is, what are the best learnings from each state? What is Lagos State good at that Ogun, Oyo, Osun, Ekiti, and Ondo can take away from it? What is Ogun State good at? What is Ekiti State good at? I think that should be the core and the bedrock of Dawn going forward. Thank you.
The the keynote speaker, I remember during his presentation, he did say something like, you spent a lot of money to send us to school. Give us the opportunity to show you what we have learned. And I don't know whether anybody has noticed any similarity in the passion exhibited by the lead speaker as well as the Honorable Commissioner. It might be interesting to know that they were classmates in school. So they have take away from our presentation, and one thing I really captured from our presentation was that there's the need for consistency in policy making and implementation, rather than the usual policy somersaults we have between one administration and another. And another thing she mentioned, and I think is a key takeaway, is the fact that innovation can be something as simple as doing ordinary things in an extraordinary way. They don't need to be mighty things, you know. So those are two key takeaways I was able to get from our presentation. So I think we have two more contributions, and I want to start from my left this time, and I want to invite Dr. Tyler to actually further contribute to the issue about innovative governance and service delivery. Let's give him a round of applause.
I want to avoid standing, so I don't waste time. I think several things have been said. If you look from a private sector perspective at governance and innovation, three things stand out. One, no business invests in a bad deal. All businesses invest in good deals. The work of governance innovation in creating good deals is imperative to success, particularly when we discuss the economic growth of the Southwest. Now, underpinning the question of innovation for economic growth that brings the private sector to the table, we must ask ourselves the constitutional question: how can we view the Southwest assets as opportunities for investment and for business if the assets are trapped? Okay, this underpins the battles that Lagos, for example, has led for years. I remember I was in the presidency at the time where a report came and said Lagos is creating waterways authority to stop all of us. And I remember President Yar'Adua asked the question: how many of you are policing the waters now? How many of you are cleaning the waters of weeds now? How many boats do you have to police the waters? How many boats does Lagos State have? When the answer was all in favor of Lagos, so let Lagos State be. And that was where that case ended. It's crucial that at a political level, at a national political leadership level, we have a conversation as to what does not work. Whether the Constitution says it or not, it does not work. And again, in a time of overwhelming complexity where resources are scarce, the federal government simply does not have the resources for all these responsibilities in the exclusive list. So we want to develop Butumen in Ondo, we'll wait for another 20 years. We want to develop Olokonda, we'll wait for another 30 years. This underpins some fundamental shift at the level of national political leadership. And it may also underpin the need for the region to take a regional position that can then be represented by our lawmakers in the National Assembly. We can't keep having these conversations to live here, only for the conversations to continue as it's the Constitution's problem. That's number one. Number two is, I agree with my sister that we've had suboptimal governance. But suboptimal governance is no longer an excuse. The reason why we say so is that we have seen where we have the will in the Southwest. We have made the way. So we need to now, as the Southwest, hold ourselves accountable for a minimum level of governance standards that none of us will fall below. I think that's something we can do amongst ourselves without recourse to the Constitution. So Yes, we can point to some optimal governance has been acceptable for yesterday, but we can agree here that governance that does not deliver the fundamentals is no longer acceptable. Whether we are looking at it as a question of the delivery of health, or delivery of education, or delivery of basic infrastructure, the time has come to set a bar below which, if you fall, we declare you as not governing. Okay? Number 3, we are in a race against time. I don't know how many of you have looked at the indicators. The GDP did a free fall last year with rising inflation that points to the fact that the suffering of our people has never been higher in the last 25 years as it is today. So our actions cannot be measured by barely saying some things are going on, we are trying. Our actions must be underpinned by the escalating suffering, which means the social pressure that my sister was talking about is not going to be less, it will become more as the days go by. And it will be matched by increase in crime rates and by increase in unrest. So the imperative for innovation is we must today define a framework, or at least share frameworks, that we can agree that, look, when we say basic, this is basic. And above this, you are now going to optimal or high performance governance that we can celebrate. Maybe a benchmark among states will be helpful. Okay? Of course, not everything new is innovation. So interestingly, there are many things that have been done in some states that require scaling. In the private sector, when we discuss innovation, we discuss it in 4 stages. Stage 1 is ideation, you develop an idea. Stage 2 is prototyping, you test it, if it works, you've done a few pilots. Stage 3 is you launch and you scale. Stage 4 is that you scale to market and achieve massive full market optimization. There are many ideas that already work in the Southwest, but fellow states have not adopted, learned, and scaled. So I think one of the imperatives of being here is please take notes. Please, it's more than the keynote. Let's take notes and let's say to ourselves, which ideas can we scale? Now, when you discuss innovation, a problem comes up. Most of our innovative ideas are set within capabilities that the civil service and public service in the state has not built. So you create one new innovative idea or program only to turn to the civil service to execute it, and there is no capacity there. We boasted in the Southwest before of the leading civil service anywhere in Africa. Today, that's not quite the case. And the heads of service here can bear, now we are fighting with people that can barely draft a long brief or a short brief, okay, that can write properly, that can do proper cabinet office level work. Those are we're dealing with fundamental, rudimentary public service skills that have died due to deficits in our technical capability. Therefore, I want to recommend fundamental shift in the capacity development and capability development of the service that will support innovation. We can't discuss innovation in here because reforms will not be sustainable if as soon as government goes, everybody in the civil service says, it was them that did it, or them and their consultants and their people. And so as soon as the government walks away, an honorable minister, you go, the civil servants revert back to status quo 8 years before you came in. That's no longer acceptable. But we can't say that and not capacitate them to do enough. My last point. I thank God that it was the legislature that started this thing. So let me come back to the legislature. First state, then federal. The legal framework required for innovation a lot of times underpins some legislative leadership. And our experience has been sometimes the legislature have not been as interested in a partnership with the executive to make that happen. That needs to change. Because the legal framework for a lot of innovations will cross around things that we have not done. I dare say that to really be a high-performance state in the Federal Republic of Nigeria that can optimize its resources and growth hack into the future and achieve impacts that have never been achieved before, you will likely be a rogue state. Because many of those things in the concurrent or exclusive list, you will find yourself on a continual basis at the precipice of encroaching into federal authority. Therefore, it may be interesting, Chairman of the Conference of Speakers, to consider a broad-based agenda that allows us to identify things that lock our assets and its accessibility to state government for optimization. In closing, ladies and gentlemen, there is no innovation that is useful except it delivers, one, the impacts that are substantively valuable to the citizens. We can innovate, and if it doesn't make sense to the man on the road, we are wasting our time. Two, there cannot be any sustainable innovation if it's not operationally feasible. So sometimes we create nice ideas, but when you fit it into the institutional framework, it doesn't work without radical institutional restructuring or reform. This then underpins the work for the heads of service to look at the reform from the office of the governor and ask what institutional reforms must take place to support and undergird it. In many states, the battle that is going on this morning is that on one hand, there are reform programs in the office of the governor. On the other hand, there is a civil service that is saying, let's see how you finish it. That's the reality as we speak this morning. So unless this inevitable divides are bridged, we will not make progress. Or we will similarly make progress while His Excellencies are in place. And as soon as they leave, we'll be telling stories. The last factor is our innovations must have substantive political capital. Let's say the truth. Many things don't go as far as they need to go because political leaders are too distracted to pay attention. If innovations must deliver the massive impacts they can deliver, our political leaders must pay attention. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tayo, for this well thought out contribution. I think I heard you mention the fact that innovative governance requires a fit for purpose public service with the right skills. That is actually very, very imperative. And you talked about the need for stronger and deliberate attempts at regional integration. We've done the talking for long. Let's begin to talk about now the way forward. And at this juncture, I want to say, just before we come around again, I want the lead speaker, Dr. Ogun, to begin to think about some of the issues you mentioned about states actually harnessing their competitive advantage and then ensuring that within the region there's healthy competition. Let's begin to look at how. Let's have an idea of the how to now go about that, and then Dr. Tolu also in the same regard, just some practical steps on how we can begin to think about how we do this also. I just say that I should lay this down so that by the time I come on, we have come up with some points on how we take that forward. The Honorable Commissioner, you mentioned the fact that Ogun State there was some kind of a miracle too. I feel confident in calling that. In moving the IGR from where you met it like 5-6 years ago to a level, I think it quadrupled at least 4 times. So if are there innovative steps you can just drop here for the audience to actually take away? If you have some of that. I know we can get more details and innovation training. But anyone you can feel confident enough to let us have here, that would be very useful. Father, the issue of bringing in the contribution from policy think tanks, from civil society organizations in a collaborative way with government in the Southwest, pulling in the same direction. I mean, can we give us some practical steps? Because we want to focus during this 3 days conference on the solutions rather than highlighting what the challenges are. So if you have some practical steps on how we can actually leverage the contribution of policy think tanks and organized civil society in ensuring there's innovation in governance that leads to effective service delivery, that would be very useful. That's to round off the discussion. But at this juncture, I have the honor and privilege to invite the Director General of PSSDC in Lagos to make our contribution. I want to welcome her with the round of applause.
Thank you very much. Once again, I would like to take the honor to be here this afternoon. As I was listening to the keynote address speaker and all the panelists, I began to ask myself some questions rather than what I would contribute. And I was saying to myself, dawn has brought us together. We waited for a dawn, and we're here. So the question I'm asking is, what should we look like in 5 years, for example, as a region? Do we have that picture? At the end of this conference, can we leave here with a picture of what we want ourselves to look like in all sectors, starting from governance, going to the health sector, to the education sector, and to various sectors? What do we want to look like as a region? I think that's very fundamental for us, and I'm addressing the DG on this and other people. We need to paint that picture, what we want to look like. And having painted it at this conference, the question now becomes, if we want to look like this as a region, what do we need to do? What do we require? What are the initiatives that must come in? And we have spoken, and I just leverage on what Father said about the public service. We need to build strong institutions. Administrations go, administrations come. Do we still have the apolitical civil service that we used to have? Do we need it? Should it come back? Must you have a card to progress in your career in public service? These are questions that we must begin to ask ourselves honestly. How are we leveraging on the skills that other states have? I had an institution where about 6-7 states have visited us because they want to replicate a civil service training institution. And the question I was asking is, why can't we as a region have a learning hub that becomes a resource center for the region? Why can't we have curriculum that would help us sharpen our skills, retool us? We're talking of innovation. Innovation doesn't just come. It comes with thinking. And guess what? You learn thinking skills too. There's several models of how to learn thinking. How you can be more systematic in your thinking. Creative thinking, critical thinking, thinking beyond and about. How much of thinking is going on in public service? And how much of that thinking, which brings ideas, become impactful? The Australian Public Service, at a time when it was considering innovation, they came up with a program which they called APPS 2200. They searched for 200 public servants, regardless of your cadre, regardless of your what have you. people who were passionate about innovation, who could think, and they brought them together, 200 of them, and they constituted a think tank for Australia. And Australia has, by the way, one of the best public services after Canada also. So there is always a deliberate effort in building skills and capabilities. How do we move people from junior level to middle management, from middle management to senior management, from senior management to leadership roles? How many of us have structure towards this? How many of the services do? These are critical issues because governments will go and they will come. But if we have a public service, an apolitical public service to a large extent, a service that is properly skilled, a confident civil service, where you're not afraid to come up with position papers regardless, civil service that understand policy issues, policy analysis, how you can bring policy together so that we can assist the political leadership. We must get back to that. And part of what I think we could begin to do is to look at having a learning hub in Southwest. An institute, we can turn one of our institutes to that, and then all of us, we bring all our strengths, and then we can have such an institute. All the innovations we've talked about, and we're going to talk about the next 3 months or 3 days. Do we have a knowledge management platform for them? That if I'm not in this conference, how can I access those innovations? We must begin to do human infrastructural development also. That is what will sustain our physical infrastructural development. On that note, I want to say thank you very much.
Thank you very much, DG. I think the points she made are very, very imperative. Talking about the need for lesson hubs around the Southwest so that people can leverage existing highlights of effectiveness. Sometimes you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You can actually learn from each other and try to replicate in different states. And this is one very important point that she has made here. We thank her very much for that. I think we are highly pressed for time, and at the same time, I'm aware that a lot of us are itching to ask questions or make contributions. But I think the organizers of this 3-day conference were aware that this would happen, and that is why we have created the innovation clinics. So the innovation clinics would look at the different thematic areas where of discourse and afford every single person here the opportunity to actually ask questions and get the required answers or make your contributions, and that will commence in the next 1.5 hours or thereabouts. But just to round off this aspect of the panel discussions, I'm going to give a minute each to all of them, 60 seconds, just to respond to the key issues. Honorable Commissioner, just on the IGR, you have your
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Very quickly, just to speak to Mrs. Family's point about the need to keep thinking. I think the challenge for all of us is to always commence with the gap analysis wherever we find ourselves. Whatever those gaps or perceived gaps are the bedrock of whatever solutions we need to prefer, and we must make those. I have only one word in closing. Regarding our IGR, and it's already manifesting at the federal level, TSA. Why do you have multiple accounts when revenue is going to one single statement? Everybody here think about it. It's a good takeaway. TSA. When I was in Lance, there were different headings under which we get paid. It's an avenue and a loophole for corruption, for stealing. Taking away what doesn't belong to you. Think TSA and what else?
Thank you very much. So the Treasury Single Account, she says, is this something that states, all the states in the Southwest could replicate to block the leakages in revenue? Is it something? Of course, I'm hearing a resounding no from that as well. So let's discuss this further at the innovation place. Let's look at the no's and the yeses. I see whether the eyes or the names will have it. Very quickly, 1 minute to Dr. Tyler. Dr. Tyler, I want you to focus on the issue of innovation across the Southwest. Based on the presentation we made.
Okay, when we look at innovation in the Southwest, two things must come together quickly. One is the Southwest needs to strategically import technology. We cannot afford to accelerate technology at the rate at which our universities are developing it. So I know that, for example, Ogun has the tech hub, and there's a tech hub in Lagos, Oyo is building one. So I know there's a whole tech hub revolution going on. But we need to coordinate and ask ourselves where we can be in terms of technology innovation in the next 5 years, the point that I was making. Second, we need to coordinate on outputs. Innovation for innovation's sake does not help. I asked the question last week at a trade forum. What would it take to go back to 60,000 metric tons of cocoa? And what do the states need to do to make it happen? Unfortunately, the answers to those questions then begin to fall short of practical answers. So some clear targets on innovation will help. One of the things that bets innovation is when the United States says, look, we'll put a man on the moon, then when you walk backwards, innovation starts to work. So maybe we should set some clear targets. How much cocoa will we produce and export in the next 5 years? What metric, forget about the federal government, what metric tons are we committed to? Okay? How much of embedded and captive power will Ondo provide, or Osun or Lagos State provide to the Southwest in terms of energy generation? Yes, there are legal issues to fight, but let's fight those legal issues. And then say, look, minus the federal government and the national grid, this is the amount of energy we are providing. We need some clear targets. I think clear targets will form the basis of the kind of innovation that we need. Number three is, what kind of competencies do we need to drive the particular innovations we need to go where we need to go? And then, of course, the last one is citizen satisfaction. Is it innovation if the citizens are not so happy? And what do the citizens want? So those are the things that I'll point to when we talk about innovation. Of course, I've overflogged the capacity of the civil service, which also the DG has pointed to. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, we've been reliably informed the Deputy Governor is on our way back to formally declare the conference open and open the marketplace for us. So because of that, we can actually take a little bit more time to complete the deliberation. So before I call on Dr. Awemi to actually further put more light on some of the issues that I highlighted, I would want to request, based on what the DG from Lagos, PSSDC has just told us, that we cannot feature in a future we cannot picture. Is that clear? So she made it clear, we as Southwest, we need to have a clear picture of where we are headed, so that we know when we get there whether we've actually gotten there, because except that picture is clear, wherever we get to is like a direction. So I would want her to actually, for that, give us the how-to on that. Some practical steps on how we can go about defining that picture, ensuring that the pictures have the required colors and that everybody buys into it. So Dr. Awemi, you can just conclude. We'll have time to take 2 or 3 contributions from some of the key players here.
I've been trying to say this since you spoke. But on a more serious note, see, people like to remember, to imagine. When you find people are conditioned only to remembering stuff, and they cannot imagine, the future is just an incident that happens. It is not, it's an event. It is not something that is planned. Look, Thomas Edison did not the developer did not come about the light bulb for continuous improvement of the country. You follow. See, look, what has become the new normal has been long in coming. The simple problem you were talking about tenure-based kick and start governance model, it's only simply because of what you also are observing. Every time we build government, the first thing we did to destroy this country was to destroy the civil service. And so there is a lack of kinship between the civil service and the executive government. It's like two separate governments in the same establishment. Even if you run a private sector organization and you do not carry people along, there's what they call a change management natural resistance. And so what we've been doing is, you put people, you give them good titles. We have one of the best trained people. Look, if people don't want to work for you, it's even from they are not competent to work. They just don't want to work. Obamewa, Igamewa. They will just wait for you to go. You start again. You come, you start again. At any point in time, have you ever had a situation whereby the head of civil service in each of the system governments have met together and come up with a policy? No. So who's going to execute it? Me? You? No. You go again, another governor will pay for a conference to come and talk. You'll still be there. Look, that is what you call institutional reforms. If you therefore recognize that your civil service is the greatest impediment to development, then deal with it. But don't make excuses for it. We can keep on pointing fingers at each other, but we are stuck in the mud. The key point is that we are great people, for God's sake. We are smart people. We are both the arsonists and the fire brigade. We will say it, then we will burn it. There's always a crime, there's always a danger that when you are over smart and all you know is how to manipulate, you will manipulate yourself into a situation of what? No progress. Let's be clear. There is no state, with exception. Why I keep talking about Lagos? I'm from Shagam, of course. But I'm really so internalized that I understand that when we had a debate, it was clear what was going to happen in 20, 30 years. Everybody that came into Lagos was fitting in. When Ben Akabwezi was brought in, he came into reform. Ben's job was not budget. He was basically in charge of taking all the intricacies to work together. Whatever was needed from one particular ministry was clear. The reason why Moïse stayed so long in transport, beyond political consideration, was because that was seen as a major issue that we needed to deal with. It was clear. Everything was done. The master plan was ticked on, and it was ticked on every day. And you could go and assess it. They had their own version of Safico. They understood. And madam, that was why you can see, you understand what I'm talking about. You go for greater training, you go for expansion, and you will talk, and you were part of decision making. Nobody makes decision upon your head. That is the model I'm talking about. It's the model I'm talking about.
I'm going to quickly round up this session. So 1 minute for Father John Patrick and 1 minute for the DG, and then we can go to the next stage of the program.
On the 14th of this month, there's going to be a forum in Bonn in Germany, because Germany is presiding the G20. And I'm told at that forum, there will be a C20, there will be a B20, there will also be a T20. I did not understand what all this meant. The C20 is civil society groups in the 20 countries. B20 is the business sector group belonging to the 20 countries. And T20 is the think tanks, groups belonging to those 20 countries. If we're having within Dawn Commission a G5, what prevents us from having a C5, a C6, a B6, and a D6? Why don't we bring together the think tanks within the Southwest so that they will enlighten both the legislators and the government? Why don't we have the B6, the business sector, so that they come together and say how to complement each other instead of fighting over our local, for example? Why don't we bring the C6 so that the civil society come together? We don't have to fight the state as civil society. We are supposed to be complementing each other. But finally, we don't have to fight the private sector. If they want to make money by blowing stones everywhere and people are becoming sick, we should help them. Please make money differently, not by killing the citizens. So we are meant to complement each other.
Thank you very much. Just to reiterate the point that we should leave this state with a vision for Dawn, saying what exactly we want to be. What do we want to be? It's critical. And also, we should come up with a revitalized mission statement for Dawn, for the regions. We should cascade that to the legislature, cascade it to the public service, so that there is ownership of Dawn. We must own the regional integration. That is what will take our people from want to wealth. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, distinguished panelists, the High Excellency, the Deputy Governor, and all the dignitaries here. We have to bring this session to an end, but some key takeaways from all the contributions we've had from our distinguished panelists. For me, one thing that is clear is that good governance requires everybody. My father just talked about the C's, the T's, the B's. So it's about ensuring that there is that handshake between the government, between the private sector, and also the not-for-profit sector, civil society. So that is, and of course, we also agree that information and data for evidence-informed policy making and implementation is very, very critical. That's the key takeaway for all of us. And then innovation need not be the elephant in the room, but it can be something as simple and basic as doing ordinary things in extraordinary ways. And of course, we talked about healthy competition, and for 8 states to actually focus on where they have a competitive advantage, where while learning and replicating from islands of effectiveness from adjoining states. We also agree that if it works, replicate it. If it does not work, please discard it. And then, of course, not everything that is new is innovative. And then, of course, there's also the issue about having the public service with the requisite skills to support innovative approach to governance and service delivery. And of course, the issue about collaboration between the political leadership and the bureaucratic leadership. It is not a problem that is, or a challenge that is unique to us as a people. It's the same challenge all over the world, but different climes have found a way to actually mitigate that. And we have to find a way to make it work over here. And then, of course, we talked about having a clear picture of where we are going, the vision for Dawn, so that everybody buys into that. And then the need for knowledge hubs, learning hubs within the Southwest for replication. And then we can, as a Southwest, remain the light and beacon for the rest of the regions of the country by actually ensuring that we set minimum standards for service delivery and hold ourselves accountable to this. And then finally, we cannot accept routine and suboptimal approach to governance as innovative approach to governance. Thank you all for being a wonderful audience. At this juncture, I'd like to hand over to the MC, Mr. Wale, to continue with the rest of the program. Thank you very much.